Hi, I'm Nick Hague,
And I'm Paul Hague.
and today we're going to talk about growth. What credentials do we have to talk about business growth? Well, between the two of us, then we have 75 years of experience of not only setting up and growing various different agencies, but also as market researchers. We've worked with some of the largest brands in the world, guiding them on how to grow in their respective markets. So, my first question to you, Paul, is why is growth so important?
Well, let me begin by saying that you and I have had most experience with large companies because we ran a market research company, and market research is relatively expensive, and therefore it tends to be commissioned by larger companies. My view is that growth is important to almost all companies. Of course, there are a lot of companies around that aren't bothered about growth. I once had a tailor for my suits in Bradford, and he was a guy working on his own, and he was happy to do that, and he had no intention of taking on any employees. To him, that would have been a pain, and he was happy to remain a single person running the business. We have a health store here in the small town where I live, where a couple of elderly people ran the store, and they didn't want the problems of growth. They didn't want the problems of employing people. But we're not talking to people like that today. We're talking about most people who work within either corporates or fairly large companies. And for them, growth is absolutely essential. Growth is important for a number of reasons. One is, of course, it brings in extra sales and therefore potentially extra profits. And that means that can generate good salaries. It will introduce new people to the companies. They'll want to work within a growing company. And it gives lots of opportunities. And the opposite is stagnation and decline, which, as the words suggest, are not acceptable to most companies. So growth is essential.
Yeah, yeah, and as you say, it is one of the most important requirements of any business. But so we all know that, but it's easy to say yes, we're going to grow our business, but it's not as easy to achieve unless you're lucky enough to be in an economy that's racing away and you can sit in the slipstream of the economy. So for most of us in business, we do need to engineer that growth. There's different frameworks that you can lean on to help your company, your brand grow. What would you say is the starting point when you're looking to achieve growth?
Well, the starting point is the same for almost every framework, and that is, you're perhaps not surprised I would say this, but it's research. Finding out the facts, finding out who your customers are, where they're based, what type of people that they are, being able to classify them so you can see where your strengths and your weaknesses lie in terms of those customers, how many they are, the market size, the size of your delivered market that you're selling to at the moment, but also the potential market to which you could sell in the future. So there's a lot of fact finding to be done right at the beginning of growth. You can't dive straight into one of our frameworks without fully understanding where you are at the moment. So research is the starting point.
Yeah, yeah, and obviously it's important. You need to understand your target audience, but also I think one of the key facts is it's being selective. It's knowing who you're not targeting because resources are limited and you cannot chase everyone. Not all people are in the market for your particular product. So it's important to understand those people so that you can, tailor resources and target those people that you do want to sell to. So, understanding your audience, but also in terms of, your market size, break down how particular segments, who are those segments, who's our key target audience, what are their demographics, who do you wish to serve, and those, how do you want to serve them? The route to market through potential outlets for growth. So you assess the market, you carry out some market research and collect as much detail as possible. What's the next action you should take? Is there a framework that people can use then?
Well, yeah, but by the way, I fully endorse what you say about segmentation. It's the key to marketing because if we step back a minute and think about what marketing is, it's having the right product in the right place at the right price and with the right promotion. And to some extent, those four things are things that we need to look at right at the beginning. Have we got the right product? And who is it that's buying it? because our product, our offer, isn't going to be suitable to everybody. It's going to resonate particularly with some people. They're the segment that we go for. And have we got the right distribution, the right place, the right supply to that place? And is our price right for these people? And have we got the right promotion? So checking out those 4 pillars, if you like, of good marketing is a good starting point. We need
Yeah.
to do that. But once we move beyond that, we start to think about the frameworks which we can use our research to find out growth opportunities. And one that I like is one suggested by Ansoff, Igor Ansoff. He became an American citizen, a consultant, an academic, and he suggested that opportunities lie on 2 axes. And they're very simple axes. One is the product that you've got at the moment or that you could produce. So it's an existing product or new products. And the other is the markets that you serve, your existing market or a new market. And if we think of these as axes, when we get 4 quadrants, in the bottom left corner, in that southwest corner, we've got people who are your existing customers buying your existing products. Now, this to me is the starting place for looking for growth. These are people who you're selling to at the moment with a product that they presumably like, otherwise they wouldn't be buying from you. They know you and they trust you. But I have questions about these, and research hopefully will be able to answer those questions. How much do you actually know about the people within that southwest corner? Do you know how much of the share of wallet that you've got? Because most companies don't have 100% share of wallet. Is there extra business that you could go for within those existing customers with the products that you sell at the moment? Because that's a great starting point for growth. Most
Yeah.
people get seduced into wanting to go into that sort of northeast corner up there, which is new products into new markets. They think, oh, this is a great lung for expansion. But we'll come to that. That's got great problems there, or potential problems anyway. So
Yeah.
the starting point is to have a look at that bottom left corner, your existing products into existing markets. How much more business can you do there?
Yeah, and I think it's just an important point, isn't it? You might be missing that massive opportunity that's right under your nose. Make sure that you exhaust that maximum share of wallet that you can take from your customers.
Absolutely, because if you do that, you're leveraging all the things that are your strengths. That these people know you, they trust you, they're buying from you already. They possibly could buy more with a little bit more persuasion. So then we think about where next could we look again on Ansoff's matrix. So if we think about the people that we're not serving at the moment, in other words, new markets, is there a possibility of selling this existing product, which we know does sell because it sells to our existing customers? Could we sell it into new markets? And those new markets could be new geographies. Is there a region that we could isolate and sell new products to? Or it could be new segments, people that we could sell to. And then, of course, so that's an opportunity for growth. And a third opportunity is to take our existing customers and sell them new products. They know you, they already do business with you, therefore they trust you. And here you are, you should know them. You possibly should also know what their needs are in terms of products that you're not selling at the moment. Think of launching new products to them. And once you've exhausted those, existing products to existing markets and new products to new markets and so on, then you can possibly think about selling completely new products to completely new markets. But that's also an opportunity for growth. And we've seen many companies be very successful in doing that.
Yeah, and I think just giving a few examples there to bring it to life, and especially when you're looking at selling, new products to existing customers, it's again a massive opportunity. But a great example I think of that is Apple. I'm a brand loyalist to Apple. I have I'm speaking to you on an Apple Mac. I've got an iPhone, I've got an iPad, I've got AirPods. And so does the rest of the family. So we definitely converted by this product extension. And it's easy, as you say, once you've already bought into the brand, you're sold in terms of the quality of the product and what it can do, and obviously the ease of which Apple products work together. Whereas,
I think that's a good. I think it's a good example that Nick. We should remember that Apple are in the technology space, so the expansion that they have made has always been with high tech products. So they started, of course, with computers and did a great job there, and then they've moved in. They moved into iPhones and watches and sort of health benefits and so on. But it's all high tech, and so they haven't moved that far from their brand core position. I think
yeah,
another example that you might want to talk about is Virgin, because they have had successes and failures in doing that. I mean, just to mention a couple of failures, I mean, Virgin moved into hairdressing, they moved into brides, they tried to use the Virgin name to sell cars, and and none of that worked. But they have had other successes, haven't they?
well, they have, yeah, they have, and actually, that's probably a good example if we're looking at that far-reaching quadrant where we're looking to sell, new products to new markets, as you say. And I think, when I think of Virgin, well, I listen to Virgin Radio every morning. When I'm traveling to see one of my sons in America, I travel on Virgin Airlines through choice. But I'm not this brand loyalist like I am with Apple. I'm not a member of a Virgin Active gym, but they have, as you say, they've had some failings with the hairdressers and selling cars. But equally, you can, there's Virgin Money, there's Virgin Hotels, fibre packages in terms of Virgin Media. You can order your monthly wine on Virgin Wines. So they have made a go of moving into different sectors, still with that same branding, that red, very distinguishable brand that they've got. So they have made successes of that, but lots of different market sectors over time. So I think the key is, and branding is another topic that we'll touch on another time, but it's all the while meeting those brand guidelines that they set out, but delivering that unique, exceptional customer experience that we all associate with the Virgin brand.
Yeah, and it's interesting, isn't it, that their model for doing that has been through franchising. So whereas Apple own all their businesses, they've moved into iPhones and watches and so on, and they're all their Apple businesses. Whereas Virgin don't own, they own a small share or a franchise within the trains that they operate or the music programs and so on. I mean, what does fascinate me about Virgin, and it comes back to this danger point I've got of moving from your existing market and your existing customers into something completely new. Of course, Branson didn't start with his airlines or his music or anything like. Well, he did start with music, and that's the point. He started with a record shop in London. And he moved from that, completely distanced himself into something really quite wacky. Now, whereas we mentioned Apple, their core value is technology. In Virgin, it was a David and Goliath thing. We'll take some of these large sectors which are sleepy, and where we can perhaps turn them on their head. We will talk about that in terms of growth opportunities as well, and that's where they've been successful.
Yeah. So the Ansoff model, I mean, most of the people listening or watching today, they'll have heard that, and I think it's good to talk through those different quadrants and how you can play to your strengths in order to grow in respective markets. Are there any other frameworks that can be used to generate growth?
It's worth mentioning that yes, I was going to talk about the Boston Consulting Group, which in a way is a little bit similar to Ansoff. But Boston Consulting Group argued, rather like Ansoff, that there are two axes that promote growth. There's growth itself. Are you in a market that's static or growing? And you mentioned that earlier on. If you exist within a growing market, that's absolutely brilliant, and you're either lucky or made some good decisions to be in that growing market. So choose a growing market if you can, and determine your market share within that market. It's always better to have a large market share because you can begin to dominate and control it. So Boston Consulting Group, they were famous for inventing those four quadrants again, where they had a cash cow, and the cash cow was delivering lots of profits, but it was in a stagnant market. So they had a big market share, but it wasn't going anywhere. But it fueled the growth in other areas. So they had something called question marks, which was a fast-growing market, but they had a low market, the product or the division within the company had a low market share within that market. But it was a question mark because it could have moved into the segment which was a larger market share, the stars. And if you think about a large company like Apple, then you can begin to position its products within the Boston Consulting Group. It's got the cash cow, which was its computers, but is now the iPhone because it's generating lots of profits. But actually, their market share is now staying fairly static. But it's got some sort of stars like, what were originally watches, but have now turned into health wearables, something that you put on your wrist and it will tell you whether you need to get to A&E quickly or you have a medical problem or you're sleeping well or something like that. And that has now become they were question marks and now they become stars. So you can think about growth in terms of where your portfolio of products lie in terms of opportunities. Is it in a growth market or a stagnant market? Have you got a low market share or a high market share?
Yeah, and I think those two matrices, the Ansoff and the Boston matrix, it's the simple matrices that the two
Yeah.
by two, and I think that's what you're looking from a framework is simplifying a difficult situation to then guide you in terms of what action you should then take.
Well, can I just say, Nick, that one of the things that we want to encourage people to do is to use a variety of different frameworks because, although somebody might say, well, this Ansoff framework sounds really good, I'll start with that. Don't forget that we started with research, and that's really important. And Ansoff is one, and Boston Consulting Group is another. And it should be said that almost all growth, if you're responsible for growth within your company, you ought to be looking at lots of different frameworks. You ought to perhaps have a view that some people argue that a third of your product makeup should be new products. You have to constantly be renewing the product offers that you've got. New being one of the most important words in the marketing vocabulary. We've got something new, people are interested in new things. So that means you've got to understand how to launch new products.
So talking of new products and growth opportunities, is it worth reflecting on the framework called the diffusion of innovation? It's a framework that I know I often used in presentations to clients when showing how new products or services are launched into a market.
Well, yes, it's a good framework, one developed by Everett Rogers, who carried out a number of studies on launches of new products, and he determined that there was a pattern that was mirrored in each of those launches. He said that in a launch, there's always somebody who is interested in a new product. He called these the innovators. It represents a very small proportion of the total. By his estimation, it's 2.5%. Sounds very precise, but this is what he found in each of his studies. Then he's followed by the early majority. So these are other people who are interested in new products, and they're still a fairly small proportion, 13.5%. And there's a bit of a chasm between those innovators and the early majority. You've got to be able to cross that chasm to get some reasonable sales within the market. And then you've got the early majority, and then you've got the laggards coming up at the back, the late majority and the laggards at the back. So it follows a pattern in the launch of a new product, and it means that you've got to be prepared for it to take time. And you've got to be aiming at specific people who you think are going to be innovators or the early majority, because those are the people that are going to buy the product in the first place.
Yeah. So it is. It's a patience game, isn't it? It's a slow grind, getting that flywheel moving. But once you've got those early adopters on board after the innovators, then
Now, coming back to growth and thinking of growth and having a significant proportion of your product offer which is new, relatively new. How do you do this? It is argued that perhaps a third of your product offering should be things that have been launched within the last 5 years, relatively new products. So there's a framework called Blue Ocean, which is worth looking at. And the Blue Ocean framework suggests that an ocean is made up of water which is rather difficult to do business with. He calls that the red ocean, or they call it the red ocean. There's lots of competition in there. It's very difficult to to compete, and there's the blue ocean, which might be open to new suggestions, open to new products, and that's what you've got to look for. And a bit like with Ansoff, you've got a tier 1, a tier 2, and a tier 3 as you move further away from your existing market.
Yeah.
An example of how people have used blue ocean is Cirque du Soleil. So the circus performers, the athletic circus performers, Cirque du Soleil, weren't looked at the ocean, and they said, well, the traditional circus is one which has got clowns in it, it's got animals in it, and we don't want to compete in that. It's a red ocean. We want to move into another part of the ocean where people aren't competing, and there will be music, and there will be athletes, and so on, and we will be completely different. We'll be a circus, but it'll be a completely different type of circus.
Yeah.
Another example was Yellowtail wines, which I confess I've bought as a brand, and they looked at this blue ocean strategy, and they said, well, there's two sorts of people who buy wine. There's people who buy cheap wine because it's wine and they don't want to drink it, and there's people who drink premium wines. But they said there's a group of people out there in the ocean who want to feel comfortable taking a wine that's easy to drink, that's going to be acceptable to most people. And they launched the Yellowtail brand as an Australian wine, and it's been and they used it is said that they used the blue ocean strategy to do this by aiming at a group of people who they felt weren't fully served by the existing products on the market. So it's a question of looking for that gap in the ocean where nobody is competing at the moment. Cirque du Soleil did it, Yellowtail wines did it.
Yeah, and again, it feeds into we've touched upon segmentation, haven't we, and understanding who to target and who not to target. And
Absolutely.
Again, that will be a topic that we'll cover in more depth in a later series. I think since we're talking about innovation and particularly growth, I think we definitely need to touch on the topic of disruptive innovation. And as the title of the disruptive innovation framework suggests, it's when a company is able to attack a large and maybe sleepy market with an idea that's completely different. I'm a host on the World's Greatest Business Thinkers podcast, and I recently talked to Chip Conley, who was head of global strategy at Airbnb, and he talked about how they disrupted the hotel and bed and breakfast market. But it's similar to how Uber attacked traditional taxis, Amazon attacked the bricks and mortar retail market, and in each case, when you look at these different case studies, the disruptor, they start on the fringes of the market, collecting only a small number of customers. We've just talked about Roger's diffusion of innovation there, that 2.5%. So those people that are willing to jump on board with a new product and start to, maybe go against those large incumbents that are neglecting that part of the marketplace. And bit by bit, they start to then build their market share. And this concept of the disruptor, it was introduced by Clayton Christensen in an article in Harvard Business Review called "Disruptive Technologies Catching the Wave." And also in my podcast series, I spoke with Scott Anthony, and he was one of Clayton's colleagues, and talked about innovation and disruption. And for anyone that's interested, there is a description PowerPoint presentation of all these frameworks we're talking about on the B2B Frameworks website. But this specific to this disruptive innovation, there is a particular section on how to apply Clayton Christensen's disruptive model. Are there any other frameworks we should talk about today specific to growth?
Well, let me just follow up a little bit on the disruptive model. I listened to the podcast you were talking about. I can't remember whether it was Scott or Chip, but they said something that resonates with me. They said, snow melts from the edges. Yeah. And it's at the edges where you see this opportunity for disruption, because most large companies are settled into the way they've always done business, their core business. And if people are nibbling away at the edges, they don't care too much because they've still got this massive business that they're dealing with. And, so if you take the taxi market, for example, that was a traditional market, and that you had private hire as well. And then Uber comes along and it says you can choose a taxi. You can pay for it in advance. You don't have to worry about tipping, and it'll tell you where the taxi is and how long it will be. And they completely disrupted that market. And I think it's fantastic. Now, there is an argument as to whether Tesla has disrupted the automotive market or not. I think it has. I think Tesla came in on the fringes of the market. It first launched an upmarket sports car, if you like, that most people couldn't afford, but the aficionados did it, and then it trickled down until they've actually reached the mass market. So disruptive technology is definitely one to go for. But by the way, it costs you a lot of money. And when you do get a great example, it will always be quoted by you and me, but there must be many people attempting to disrupt a market and find it quite difficult and expensive to do so. So it's a bit of a cautionary note, really, to say disruptive markets are great, but it's not necessary. If you've got growth in your title at the business, don't necessarily think you're going to make your fortune with the disruptive market. It's very, very difficult to be successful in that field.
Yeah. But yeah, so you talked about snow always melting from the edges. That's where you can look at things happening, change happening. Actually, it was neither Chip nor Scott. It was Rita McGrath.
Thank you.
It shows there's a wealth of knowledge and a wide, diverse number of people that I've spoke to on the podcast. So I recommend that you give that a listen. These frameworks we've talked about today, all useful, of course, in helping opportunities for growth. But these opportunities do need to be turned into a strategy that can be implemented. Is there a framework that people can use to stimulate this action?
Well, there are lots of frameworks for strategies. So we've got 48 frameworks on the website, all to do with growth. But a number of those are to do with strategies. It's always worthwhile coming back to the 4 Ps. After you've done all your work, to actually have a look at the 4 Ps. It's still a famous strategy because it delivers almost. Have we got the right product, aimed at the right people, at the right place, at the right time, and have we got the right promotion? So it's always worth coming back to that. But I quite like a strategy that helps you with a sequence, take something from beginning to end. So at the beginning, you need a vision, and you need, in other words, what's the market going to be like in the future? And what's our mission, the vision and mission? What's our mission within that market? And once you've got your vision and mission, you can begin to think about tangibles like objectives. What could we achieve within that market in what time frame? And is in the next 5 years and so on. And then you've got the strategy that will help you achieve those objectives, and you've got the tactics. Now, the capitals of vision, mission, objective, strategy, and tactics has made the word VMOST. It's a framework on the website, and it's well worth looking at because I think it gives structure and order to something that most people will be looking for when they're looking for a growth strategy. So they can write up their plan, their business plan, right the way through from a vision and mission through to the strategy and tactics at the end.
So for half an hour, we've been talking. We covered a good deal of ground. We've really scratched the surface, I know. But this discussion on using frameworks for growth and growing your business. I think it'd be good if we could summarize just for the listeners in terms of the key points we've talked about.
Okay, well, let's go back to the beginning. At the beginning, we said you shouldn't really look at any framework without having facts. So research has to be there. What's the market size? What market are we in? What market could we be in? So, and who are our markets? Who are our customers? Who do we want to serve? And who don't we want to serve? The segmentation within the market. So that is really important. Yeah. And then we said, looking at some basic frameworks might help, like the 4 Ps or even a SWOT, which are our strengths, our weaknesses, our opportunities and threats, having a look at that to see perhaps where we could go within the market. We talked at length about Ansoff, saying that there's 4 quadrants there, and maybe a good starting point is with our existing customers, because maybe we could sell them more. It might be the easiest way we can get growth. But beyond that, we could sell our existing customers new products, or we could find some new territories into which we could sell our products. And growth is a really important thing for new products. We talked a lot about new products, about the blue ocean strategy and how you can disrupt markets and how those growth markets pan out in terms of the proportions of people who can convert. It can take a long time. And finally, we arrived at a suggestion of a framework like VMOST, which will help you write a business plan for growth.
Yeah. Yeah. So hopefully what's clear is that achieving this business growth, it doesn't just happen overnight, it doesn't happen magically. It requires a strategic and structured approach. And therefore, utilizing various different frameworks can definitely help you not only assess what's going on in the marketplace, but then identify growth opportunities and develop strategies on the back of that in order to target so that you can grow in the future and avoid that stagnation that no one wants. There's various different frameworks that we've mentioned, 48 in total. But if anyone's interested in learning more, how best should they go about it? What's the website that they should visit?
Well, b2bframeworks.com is the place to go. And our encouragement is to just look at multiple frameworks. Don't think that one framework's it's like having a toolbox. If you had a toolbox with one tool in it, a hammer, it wouldn't be a very useful toolbox. And what we're offering to people is something with a lot of tools, a lot of frameworks within it. Have a look at all of them because some of them are going to be useful, more than one.
Yeah. So good luck in growing your business. And if you do have any questions when trying to use any of these frameworks we've discussed or any of the others that you'll see on the website, then do get in touch. info@b2bframeworks.com.
Thanks, Nick.